The late afternoon sun dipped low over Ouagadougou, painting the presidential palace in warm hues of gold and orange. Inside, President Ibrahim Traoré sat at the head of a long table, his eyes scanning a thick stack of documents. Advisors spoke in hushed tones, their words carrying the weight of national decisions. Yet his mind, though disciplined, carried a trace of weariness. It had been a long week, filled with endless meetings, international calls, and delicate negotiations. He rubbed his temple, silently longing for the simplicity of the days before power, when the world was smaller, and life was about football on dusty fields and laughter beneath the mango trees. Just as the last meeting concluded, a young guard entered the room. "Mr. President," he said, his voice careful but urgent, "someone is outside insisting to see you. He says he is your old friend." The room grew still. Advisors exchanged confused glances. Old friend? Who would dare bypass all protocols to make such a claim? In the world of politics, friends often wore masks, and trust was the most precious, most fragile currency. "His name?" Ibrahim asked, his tone calm yet sharp. The guard hesitated. He said Musa. The president froze. Musa. The name echoed like a whisper from the past, carrying the scent of red earth after rain, the shouts of boys chasing a worn-out ball, and the laughter that once came so easily. It had been 20 years since he last heard that name spoken to him directly. 20 years since they parted ways on the edge of their village, each following a different road. "Bring him," Ibrahim said simply. His advisors protested at once. "Mr. President, this is irregular. We must screen." But Ibrahim lifted a hand, silencing them. His eyes did not leave the guard. "Bring him," he repeated. Moments later, the heavy doors opened, and in stepped a man who carried the years visibly upon his shoulders. Musa. His hair, once thick and black, was now touched with gray. His skin bore the lines of struggle and survival. His clothes were simple, almost too simple for the grandeur of the palace: worn sandals, a faded shirt, trousers patched at the knees. Yet his eyes were the same. Deep, warm, and alive, though now shadowed by hardship. For a moment the room seemed to vanish. Ibrahim rose from his chair, his usually measured steps faltering with emotion. "Musa," he whispered, as if afraid the vision before him might dissolve. Musa smiled, though it was faint, tentative. "Ibrahim," he said softly, "it's been a long road." And just like that, the years collapsed. The walls of power, the titles, the layers of protocol, all faded. Before him stood not a beggar, not a stranger, but the boy who had once shared his dreams, who had run beside him barefoot across rocky paths, who had stood with him when others mocked his ambitions. "Musa," Ibrahim's voice broke through the stillness. He crossed the room in quick strides and embraced his old friend tightly, as if afraid to let go. The advisors were stunned. Guards shifted uncomfortably, unsure how to react. Never had they seen the president so unguarded, so vulnerable, so human. Pulling back, Ibrahim searched his friend's face. "Where have you been all these years? Why did you never come?" Musa lowered his gaze. "Life took me places I never thought I'd go, places I never wanted to go. I didn't think you'd even remember me." "Remember you?" Ibrahim's voice carried both disbelief and conviction. "Musa, I could never forget. You are part of who I am." The silence that followed was heavy, but it was not awkward. It was filled with unsaid memories, with the ghosts of childhood mischief and the echoes of dreams whispered under the stars. "Come," Ibrahim said, his voice steady now. "Not here, let's sit somewhere quiet." He led Musa through a side corridor, leaving behind the puzzled advisors and guards. They entered a private garden within the palace grounds. The air was cooler, filled with the fragrance of hibiscus and bougainvillea. A fountain trickled nearby, its sound soothing against the backdrop of the bustling city beyond the walls. They sat on a wooden bench, just the two of them. No titles, no guards, no barriers. "Tell me," Ibrahim said gently, "what happened to you?" Musa exhaled, a long, weary breath. Do you remember when we were boys, we always said the future would be bright, that no matter what, we'd make something of ourselves? I remember, Ibrahim replied. Well, for you it came true. For me, Musa's voice faltered. I lost my way. My father died young, you remember. I tried to keep the family farm alive, but the land grew dry, the rains failed us. Then came debts, sickness, and mistakes I cannot undo. I left the village to find work in the city, but the city does not forgive the poor. I drifted from job to job, sometimes sleeping under bridges, sometimes going days with only water in my stomach. His eyes grew moist, but he blinked the tears away. I thought of you often, but I didn't want you to see me like that. You had become a soldier, a leader, a man of destiny, and me, I was just a shadow. Ibrahim listened without interrupting, his jaw clenched, his heart aching. Every word was a knife, cutting through the armor of power and reminding him of the fragile thread that tied all lives together. Musa, he said quietly, you were never just a shadow. You are my brother. We shared bread when we had little. You gave me courage when others laughed at my dreams. I owe part of who I am to you. Musa shook his head. And yet look at you and look at me. Do not measure worth by clothes or titles, Ibrahim replied firmly. Measure it by the heart. And your heart, Musa, is greater than most men I've met. The fountain continued to murmur as the two men sat in silence once more. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the garden. It was as if time itself had paused, allowing the past and present to meet, to reconcile, to begin again. Finally, Musa spoke. I didn't come here for pity. I came because I had nowhere else left to go. I thought if I could just see you once more, I would remember what hope felt like. Ibrahim's eyes softened, glistening in the fading light. Then hope you shall have. As long as I live, you will never walk alone again. Musa looked away, his lips trembling as he fought the rising tide of emotion. Ibrahim. But Ibrahim reached out, gripping his shoulder with the strength of brotherhood. No more words tonight. You are here. That is enough. As the call to prayer echoed faintly from the city beyond the palace walls, the two childhood friends sat side by side, not as president and commoner, but as boys again, boys who had once dreamed of a brighter tomorrow, and who, by the grace of fate, had found each other once more after 20 long years. The evening sky above Ouagadougou was painted in hues of indigo and violet, stars beginning to peek through the vast African canvas. Inside the palace gardens, the two men still sat together, President Ibrahim Traoré and his long-lost childhood friend Musa. The world around them moved in the rhythm of politics, guards patrolling, phones ringing, decisions waiting. But here, time seemed suspended. Musa, Ibrahim said after a long silence, you must stay here tonight. We will speak more in the morning. But Musa shook his head. Ibrahim, this palace is not for men like me. I don't belong here. The president leaned closer, his eyes firm. You belong wherever I say you belong, and you, Musa, belong by my side. His voice carried no arrogance, only sincerity. Yet Musa still hesitated, unused to such generosity after years of rejection. For him, the palace walls seemed too high, too polished, too far from the dusty lanes of their childhood. Listen, Ibrahim continued, softening his tone. Do you remember the mango tree at the edge of our village, the one where we carved our names? Musa allowed a faint smile. Yes, we used to sit there for hours making plans too big for boys. And do you remember, Ibrahim said, when I told you that if I ever became someone important, I'd never forget the ones who walked with me when I was nobody? Musa nodded slowly. I meant it, Ibrahim said firmly. You are not just a visitor here, you are my brother. For the first time, Musa's eyes filled with tears he could not hold back. He looked away, ashamed of his weakness, but Ibrahim clasped his hand tightly. Do not hide your pain from me. We shared laughter once, and if tears must come, let us share them too. The two men sat there as the stars thickened above. At last, Musa spoke again, his voice heavy. Ibrahim, I didn't come only to see you. I came because I am carrying a burden I can no longer bear. The president's expression grew serious. Tell me. Musa exhaled deeply. After my father died and after I lost the farm, I tried everything. I worked as a porter carrying loads twice my size. I cleaned streets. I even labored in construction sites where men fell from scaffolds like flies, but still I stayed. And yet, no matter how hard I tried, it was never enough. My family grew sick, my children, they are still small, and I cannot feed them. Last year, I lost my wife. She died in childbirth because we could not afford a doctor. His voice broke. Ibrahim's chest tightened, the weight of his friend's pain pressing upon him. Musa continued, struggling to keep his composure. I came here today not as a man who wants favors. I came as a man desperate to remember dignity. I wanted to see if friendship still lived in this world or if power had erased it. That is all. Ibrahim rose from the bench and began packing slowly, his fists clenched. This was more than personal. It was the very reality of his nation, embodied in the life of his closest friend. Hunger, poverty, despair. Problems he fought daily in meetings and policies, but here they had a face. Musa's face. At length Ibrahim stopped and turned. His eyes glistened. Musa, I cannot undo your past suffering, I cannot bring back your wife, but I can promise you this, you will not be forgotten again, nor will your children. As long as I breathe, they will eat, they will learn, they will live. Musa bowed his head, overwhelmed. Ibrahim, you owe me nothing. But the president shook his head. No, I owe everything to the soil we both sprang from, and you are part of that soil. He called for a guard who approached cautiously. Prepare a guest room, Ibrahim instructed, and see that this man is treated with honor. Tomorrow I will speak with him again. The guard nodded and led Musa away. For a moment, Ibrahim stood alone in the garden, staring up at the stars. He whispered under his breath, how many more Musas are out there? How many voices are unheard? That night sleep did not come easily. Memories of childhood flooded back, two barefoot boys racing down dusty paths, sharing stolen mangoes, dreaming of futures that seemed impossible. They had once sworn an oath of brotherhood under the moonlight. Ibrahim had risen to power, but Musa had fallen into the shadows. Now fate had brought them together again, and Ibrahim knew this was no coincidence. The next morning, sunlight spilled into the palace courtyard. Ibrahim entered the dining hall, where Musa sat quietly at the edge of a long table, dressed in clean clothes provided by the staff. He looked uncomfortable, as though he feared breaking something too fine to touch. Good morning, Musa, Ibrahim greeted warmly, sitting across from him. Did you sleep well? Yes, Musa replied softly, better than I have in years. They ate together, simple food though prepared with care. Musa hesitated at first, but Ibrahim encouraged him. Eat, my brother, do not hold back. As they ate, Ibrahim asked, tell me of your children, what are their names? Musa's face lit with a fragile smile. Aminata, the eldest, she is 12. She loves books, though we could never afford many. Then there is little Karim, he is 8, strong but often sick. And the youngest, Fadu, she is just 5. She dreams of going to school, but his voice trailed off. Ibrahim placed a hand on the table. They will go to school, Musa. That is my promise. Their future will not be lost. Musa lowered his eyes, tears forming again. Ibrahim, your heart has not changed. I feared the world of power had hardened you, but you are still the boy I knew. The president smiled faintly. Power is only worth something if it remembers where it came from. After breakfast, Ibrahim called his advisors. They arrived, skeptical at first, glancing at Musa with curiosity. Ibrahim stood tall and addressed them. This man, he declared, is not just my friend. He is a reminder of our people, of their struggles, their dignity, their worth. What we do here must not only serve nations, it must serve men like him, families like his. Never forget that. The advisors nodded solemnly, sensing the weight of his words. Later that day, Ibrahim took Musa on a walk through the city, not as president and citizen but as brothers. People watched in astonishment as the president walked side by side with a man dressed plainly, laughing with him, listening to him. Some whispered, others cheered. For Musa, it was surreal, a return to dignity, to being seen. By evening, as the sun dipped once more into the horizon, Musa turned to Ibrahim. "My friend, I came here with nothing but sorrow. I leave with hope. For that I thank you." But Ibrahim shook his head. "No, Musa, you do not leave, you stay. Your journey with me has just begun." The two men stood there, side by side, as the call to prayer rose once more across the city. It was not just a reunion of friends, it was the beginning of a story that would inspire millions, a reminder that even in halls of power, humanity must never be forgotten. The following days brought whispers across the nation. News spread quickly. The president had welcomed an old childhood friend into the palace, a man who came from the soil of the people, from the same dust and struggle that millions knew too well. For many, it was more than news, it was a symbol. Crowds gathered outside the palace gates, some simply curious, others moved by the story. Children held signs that read, "We are Musa too." Mothers spoke of dignity, and fathers murmured about hope. The simple act of recognition between two men had become a spark, igniting emotions that politics alone could never stir. Inside the palace, Musa felt the weight of this attention. He walked carefully, always conscious that he was a guest in a world not his own. But Ibrahim would not allow him to shrink into the shadows. He introduced him to ministers, generals, and foreign envoys, each time saying, "This is Musa, my brother. Respect him as you respect me." Some smiled politely, others frowned, but none could ignore the message. The president valued loyalty, roots, and humility more than titles. One evening, after a long day of official meetings, Ibrahim invited Musa once again into the quiet of the palace garden. The air was cool, filled with the scent of jasmine. The city beyond the walls buzzed with life, but here only the cicadas sang. "Musa," Ibrahim began, "when I look at you, I see not only my friend. I see the truth of my country. Your struggles are not unique, they belong to millions. And if I ever forget them, I will have failed." Musa nodded, his voice low. "But Ibrahim, can one man change everything? The burden seems too heavy even for you." The president leaned back, gazing at the stars. "Perhaps not everything, but I can change something, and sometimes that is enough to begin a fire that spreads." Musa was silent for a moment, then smiled faintly. "You always spoke like this as a boy, big dreams, bigger than the sky." "And you," Ibrahim replied warmly, "always kept me grounded when I flew too high. That balance is why I need you still." The two shared laughter that drifted into the night air, laughter that reminded them of days when life was simple, when hope was not so fragile. The next morning, Ibrahim stood before the nation to deliver a speech. The courtyard was filled with officials, soldiers, and citizens. Cameras streamed the words "Live" across the country, and beside him, standing humbly yet firmly, was Musa. "My people," Ibrahim began, his voice steady and clear, "today I do not stand alone. Beside me is Musa, my childhood brother. For 20 years we walked separate paths, one toward power, the other toward struggle. But both paths were carved from the same earth, the same pain, the same hope." The crowd listened, breath held. Too often, leaders forget their roots. They build walls so high, even their own brothers cannot climb them. But I tell you today, what is power if it forgets the people? What is leadership if it cannot embrace its own? His hand rested on Musa's shoulder. This man lost much. He represents every family who has felt hunger, every father who has buried a loved one, every child who dreams of school but cannot go. His story is not his alone, it is ours. And his place beside me is a reminder. I will never forget where I came from, nor will I forget you. Applause erupted. Some wept openly, others shouted his name. Musa himself bowed his head, overwhelmed by the weight of the moment. After the speech, as the crowd dispersed, Musa turned to Ibrahim. "You risked much, showing me to the world like this." Ibrahim smiled. "Truth is never a risk, it is a foundation, and with you here that foundation feels stronger." That night back in the quiet of his quarters, Musa lay awake, tears wetting his pillow. He thought of his children, of Aminata, Karim, and Fadu, and how their lives might now change. He thought of his wife, gone too soon, and wished she could have seen this moment. Ibrahim, too, lay awake, but with a different burden. He knew that gestures were not enough. Promises needed action, speeches needed proof. Musa's presence was not only personal, it was a test. Would the nation see change or only words? Yet as dawn broke and the first call to prayer echoed across the city, both men knew one thing for certain. Their reunion was no accident. It was destiny. And from that moment, the story of a president and a poor farmer's son would live in the hearts of millions, a story of loyalty, humility, and the unbreakable bond of brotherhood. Because sometimes, the greatest power a leader can show is not in commanding armies or signing treaties, but in remembering the hand that once shared a mango under a village tree and never letting it go.